workshop on whatever today is.
25th.
August 25th. Tuesday, August 25th. We are in the Joanne Idlette Teacher Education Center. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 1:03. I'm going to violently call the meeting to order at 1:03. We are here for the superintendent's workshop, and I'm going to recognize Dr. Moore to take us through and discuss the purpose of the workshop.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We do have 4 items on the agenda today. I will briefly set those items up, and then each of the cabinet members will present them and afford the opportunity for questions before moving on to the next item. The first item will be an item that will come before you, proffered by Ms. Dampier. That is the SAT offering to students. Mr. Fagan will then provide an overview of legal services invoice for Alan Nortron Blue. And then Mr. Fagan will also provide a presentation for workers' compensation. That was a presentation that was requested earlier in the midst of COVID. And as Mr. Fagan prepped during the earlier individual meetings, that this is the presentation that would be coming, and here it is. And then finally, a overview of the annual feedback as it relates to my first 6 to 7 months as superintendent and the process that we will follow to bring that to a close. But to lead us off, Ms. Dampier, you now have the floor.
Good afternoon, through the chair, board members. I'm very excited today to bring this item before you. The SAT, we offer this opportunity for our juniors and seniors during the school day. The approval affords the opportunity for all juniors to take this assessment during the spring months. And then for our seniors who need it for a concordant score, they can take it in the fall, which is the first opportunity we'll provide for them, as well as in the spring. But this is provided during the school day, so students do not have to come on the weekends to take the test. So we're very excited. This is our 4th year that we've been doing this. And so I'm asking for, bringing it forward. Are there any questions?
Questions?
Yes, thank you.
Mrs. Justice.
Income eligible reduced price, how is that? How do students qualify?
If they're free and reduced lunch, then the test is $8. If for regular lunch price students, it is $52. And that is the rate that a College Board has set.
Thank you. Mrs. Rosario.
Yes, my question is really just confirmation based on our meeting last week with regard to this item and homeschoolers. So the statute is, I see your head shaking. So the statute that provides this opportunity for homeschoolers basically just says that the district, it is incumbent upon the district to offer the invitation to our homeschoolers. So I'd just like to give this opportunity to publicly allow you to share what our work is going to be from here on forward to invite and to let homeschoolers know that this opportunity is for them as well.
Once this item is approved, as we did last year, we had flyers go out. We did a school messenger. We put it on our website, the homeschool website. We also coordinated with the Homeschool Association through you, and you assisted with that, with notifying parents as well. But we have a listing. If those parents have given us their phone numbers, their addresses, we send that information out to them. And so she's been, Mrs. Rosario has been like a liaison in case they did not want to release that information, their personal information to us.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. I think that's very important. A lot of homeschoolers do not watch our board meeting, and I get it. I understand why. As a member of the Homeschool Association, as you just mentioned, there are opportunities in our other forums and chat sessions and co-ops where homeschoolers of high schoolers ask, what are the options for them when it comes to either ACT or SAT. So that's one of the reasons why I brought this up. I thought it's important for the connections to still be there, even though legally the district cannot tell homeschoolers what to do or how to do it, even what curriculum to use. But the reason why this is written in statute is to provide those opportunities, just like we are supposed to offer invitations to the homeschooling community with regard to our sports and after-school programs and clubs and things of that sort. So I'm glad that we are doing that, and I appreciate the work that the district is doing to offer the invitation. The other question that I had is just if you could clarify, in the past, the district offered the ACT, and this year we're moving into the SAT or offering the SAT. Can you just explain to the public why we are doing that, why we are doing the SAT or offering the SAT and not the ACT?
This is our second year providing the SAT during the school day. Prior to that, we offered at the ACT. And just the SAT provided additional options for our kids, like some online software that they could actually access to remediate, and teachers could utilize in the classrooms with the students to practice. So through Khan Academy and some other resources for them. So they provided a little bit more options for our kids and the teachers. We got feedback from the high school principals as well as the teachers that were in that, who were actually helping with this, to determine whether or not we were going to go with ACT or SAT. To be honest with you, my preference would have been ACT, but the teachers really wanted to go the route of the SAT because of the resources that they had. And also during that time, we looked at how the students, especially with the concordant scores, did compare with the ACT and SAT, and they actually did better in math with the SAT than ACT reading. But because of the additional resources that the students could access from home as well to practice, the teachers and the schools decided to go with the SAT during the school day.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I have one last question with regard to maybe, I think a couple of weeks ago, we talked about what schools can do in terms of development for parents, not staff development, but developing our parents and keeping them in the loop of some of the things that are happening in the school and how parents can better get involved with their children. And one of the things that I think would be a great opportunity for schools is to teach parents the differences between the SAT and the ACT, because what we're offering is just options. It is not the only thing that parents can choose for their children. If a parent believes through these trainings and sees that their child is better skilled in the areas that ACT teaches or tests on versus the SAT, then obviously it's the parent's right to choose which test their child should and ought to take. And that's where, obvious parents' rights are so important. But I don't want to get too far off course, but I think that it's important for schools, or maybe even if it's a district-wide initiative, to give parents this education on what the differences are. A lot of students don't know the differences between each of those tests. So I don't know if the district has talked about this, leadership or at school levels. And maybe this isn't something that we talked about last year either, but does anyone know what our schools are doing? Maybe it's in the guidance department that we're advising parents and students of the differences so that kids can choose what would be best for them. And then my last part of that is offering this opportunity for students to take the SAT. Does this benefit the school district in any way?
Well, it benefits the school district as far as the students having access to take the test during the school day, especially our seniors who have not passed and they haven't met the graduation requirements. This is another opportunity for them to take the test, and meet the concordance score, that they don't have to come on the weekends to try to get transportation, et cetera. Even for our juniors, a lot of our students ordinarily would have to come on the weekends. Their parents would have to make sure they had transportation, but this is an opportunity during the school day that we're offering this for our juniors and also for those seniors. With that in mind, we do have some schools, we have Vero Beach High School and Sebastian River in the past that have also offered ACT and SAT in addition, as just that they want to offer that for their students, another opportunity. They don't want to wait until the spring. So it is up to the schools, and we've had some schools actually do that. And that's not uncommon, that they say, hey, I don't want to wait until the spring to test my juniors. I want to offer it in the, in the fall for them. So that's not uncommon as well. But yes, part of the conferencing with, the guidance counselors as well as with the teachers and the administrators would be to advise parents on the opportunities for students, because a lot of these assessments you need for the Bright Futures to qualify for that. That's another opportunity for our kids where they can take this and it qualifies for the Bright Futures. As you know, the state just sent out some correspondence where they're providing free ACT, SAT for public high school students, but that information will not be ready until the spring. And the opportunity there is we'll offer it, for students to take the test to qualify for the Bright Futures, another opportunity. But it's not for every student, it's for those students who want to take it again. So that's another opportunity for students that the state has provided through the CARES Act. That's something new this year.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Mrs. Justice, and then I have a couple questions.
Yeah, thank you. So I have a number of concerns about some of the things that you just said, Mrs. Dampierre, because we used to give the ACT, and the school district did cover the cost of that, and it was for the concordant scores. So from a parent's perspective, as you go through counseling and guidance counseling and having a sophomore, there are a lot of moving parts. And while you're trying to get your schedule going for your child and map out what their high school career is going to look like as far as the courses they're going to take, there needs to be some continuity, I think. And I feel like parents, every school doing different things, when you say the principal can decide whether they want to do it or not, I feel it should be more parent-led. And that a principal wanting to or not wanting to versus, every student having the same opportunities to have the same experience. And, as we go and move and change things, are we making sure that parents are informed so they can make the best decisions for their high school students? I have a real concern about that.
That is the goal moving forward, especially now that, we have guidance counselors, even though they're starting at the elementary, we actually was able to allocate an additional guidance position at the secondary schools to actually be able to meet with parents and be able to meet with students. Instead of, a lot of times the scheduling and all of the management, we really want them working with parents and students and our school counselors being that voice and being that support for our students. So that is the goal moving forward, and we are redefining our school counselors' roles in the schools this year, and that is a goal of my department that we're working on.
Thank you. I believe I had this conversation in our agenda review and not here, but, and I don't think you talked about it here, but there's a schedule for the testing. And there's a schedule where we made certain decisions about when to offer testing. Can you speak to that a bit, please?
Yes, there are certain days that the SAT has outlined for us for the year, like windows. And we have selected September 23rd, October 14th, where we'll provide that opportunity for our seniors. And then we have selected March 3rd, before the FSA, all the testing began for the juniors during the day, so they can really be able to concentrate. Other windows are March 24th, April 13th, and April 27th, but we're not selecting those days. We really don't want to get into testing season and have that disruptive. So we really wanted to make sure that that was done at the beginning of March. So that will be the date that we've selected for our juniors to take it on our campuses.
So for the seniors, they have an option of 923 or 1014? Can they do both?
They get to select one. They won't have the test results by then.
But if they took, say, the 923 date, and either didn't feel great about their testing or just wanted to give themselves another option, would they be able to also, even if they didn't have the tests, take the test again on October 14th?
I'm quite sure they would.
Through the chair, although it may be allowed, not recommended.
Yeah.
So the advantage of SAT and the link with Khan Academy, one of the interesting things that Khan Academy does through a partnership with the College Board is directly link the student's outcome to opportunities to grow the score. So there are opportunities, as Ms. Dampier was alluding to, where we need to be significantly more intentional regarding the awareness of required scores. Make no doubts about it, this is a two-pronged approach, one of which it is a gatekeeper to acceptance into universities and colleges, as well as, in other cases, a concordance score for a student to receive a high school diploma. I don't think we do a good enough job of fully ensuring parents understand the significance, importance of this score and the resources that are available to us, both in the confines of the school day, as well as supplemental in terms of before school, after school, as well as additional resources and the use of something very similar to Khan Academy. The shift to Khan Academy was, to SAT was a purely data-driven approach for us in Miami anyways, in looking at students' scores on both ends, the ability to respond to score, using Khan Academy to grow that score, to increase it, to maximize that score, as well as students being able to obtain a concordance score. SAT was the data-driven way in which to go. The fact that we offer this as a district is one of the things that I find absolutely amazing that we do this. But just doing it for the sake of doing it without preparing and then following up is really kind of selling ourselves short. So we need to be significantly more intentional at our schools. One of the things we did in Miami, when I was a principal, we had a junior night and a senior night where parents, you had to come with your parents or you don't do any senior activities, because our goal is just not to graduate you, which is aligned to our district's strategic plan. It is to ensure that you're ready to meet the needs to be a lifelong learner and maximize your potential. So there's a level of awareness we need to improve upon. That's what Ms. Dampier is referring to in terms of the new direction for school counselors. So you'll see a lot of that work coming. Ensuring that we're just not mining a 2.0 and a concordance course for graduation, but ensuring students have multiple opportunities to connect to the plethora of services that are out there as it relates to their post-secondary experience.
To follow up on both those things. So if a student takes the SAT in September or October, and they get their scores and their scores are not what they had hoped for, what you just said was that when we get those scores, we work to figure out how they can best enhance them moving forward. Would they have other opportunities after October to take the test again?
Through the chair, probably not at the expense of the district. Now, you do have a fee waiver for those who are on free or reduced lunch. They can access that fee waiver for a Saturday administration. Those are provided by both SAT and SA2 to the particular schools. So that would be for a Saturday administration. The direct answer to your question is your first score is never the only score that you have. The goal is always going to be, that is my initial benchmark, and there's different different theories of action on how you respond. I guess the overwhelming one would be in the fall of your junior year. If you took the PSAT, that would be your first attempt. Then you norm on that particular school, refine the areas. You take it 2 or 3 times. I'm sure you know you should be looking at power ranking or power scoring. From each particular test, you can take the highest score, so you students can focus in on one particular area to maximize the score. Bright Futures is dependent upon it. I mean, you know, my daughter wouldn't have been a bright future if I wasn't a school counselor. But there's no reason why everyone shouldn't have the same information and be able to speak about what I'm speaking about, because ultimately it changes lives. So this is the role that we will be empowering school counselors to inform our community.
Well, I do know that that 10th graders take a preliminary PSAT, so they start then, and I know that they're encouraged to do that through their 11th grade to their 12th grade year. Like everybody else here, I want to make sure that every student has the opportunity to do as well as they possibly can, which leads to my next question, which is about prep courses. I know we've talked about that there are opportunities for prep courses in the spring of the 11th grade year as part of the junior curriculum. But can you speak to that a little bit and what the opportunities are both inside the district and how we can make parents aware of opportunities outside of the district for prep courses?
Each school usually have, in the past, and when we, I may have to refer to a friend as far as the master schedule, but they usually have a some type of prep course for reading. It would be the remedial reading for intensive reading, but for math, it may be math strategies, things of that nature that they may offer. But a lot of our schools offer after-school tutorial, which, will help them with those, with whatever particular area that they're weak in. And they've identified what areas the students haven't been successful at. Because the goal is that we want students to be able to graduate, and a lot of our students who have not met the concordance scores, they are in these classes trying their hardest. Some of them you want to cry because you want them to pass, and this is like their last chance to pass. So we want to make sure, and I know a lot of the schools, they use the after-school athletic buses to transport those students, but all of that is a part of ongoing throughout the year that they're providing at the school sites. I'm not quite sure if they're offering it in their schedules this year, Mr. Myers, for math or for reading.
Through the chair, yes, there are what we consider to be intensive math and intensive reading courses. There's a careful balance between doing the remediation for the specific skills and just teaching to the test, but we do feel confident that those courses are there and we've identified the right students to participate in those so that their skills improve, which ultimately should improve their outcomes on a number of different measures. So we're excited for those to be still a part of the master schedule.
Thank you. Mrs. Rosario?
Yes, I don't mean to bring up the same thing that I mentioned before, but it's follow up to what Dr. Moore just shared. One of the reasons why I asked what schools are doing to prepare parents is because I did see a lot. I heard a lot of questions from parents and from students saying that they really didn't know, they didn't understand the difference. And that's one of the reasons why I have been advocating for schools to do parent workshops on many different levels. And this is one of Dr. Moore, everything that you shared about the PSAT and the SAT is important. I think that we should do a better job. I think you hit the nail right on the head in that, not just for Bright Futures, but many years ago, the PSAT score, and I hope it hasn't changed, the PSAT score was used to determine, depending on how the student got on the PSAT, it would help to determine what other scholarships other than Bright Futures students would get. And it would be the guide for how students would do on the SAT. So these kinds of things are so critical for parents to understand, because if we don't get them on board, we're really not going to see the progress that kids really ought to have with regard to these tests. So I'm looking forward to the changes that are ahead for students and for parents in this particular area. And I think Ms. Dampierre, what you mentioned with the guidance counselors and the changes, I think the changes that are forthcoming are going to be extremely beneficial in this particular area. So I'm excited to see what happens and where we're going to go with it.
Thank you. Mrs. Justice?
Yes, thank you very much. I'm going to circle back around to the free and reduced lunch and the cost for the SAT for students that qualify for free and reduced lunch versus students who do not. One of the things that I've come to understand is that there's been I don't want to say a push, but through the Department of Agriculture, when a school has a certain level or percentage of free and reduced lunch students at their school, the entire school can go and give free and reduced lunch, and every student qualifies. I found this out, and it was very interesting because all students at schools that were 100% free and reduced lunch, the students received a pandemic EBT card, and they normally would not qualify for it. It was about $330, and they may have received more than one. And there were parents who said, you know, I haven't qualified for free and reduced lunch. And the answer back was, well, you attend this school. So in the effort to have every student have the same opportunities, I really do hope that the district looks at somehow covering the cost of this test. I don't think that free and reduced lunch numbers can be used as a real indicator of poverty in our community, and because of that, I do believe that finances should not be a barrier for a student to take the test.
Through the chair, just a level of clarity, the waiver I was referring to was a Saturday administration in which it's tied directly to the student who is on free or reduced lunch. It is a waiver in which the principal has to sign for, and that's for a Saturday administration. We do cover the cost for the administration for all students, regardless of free reduced lunch, economic status. That is the item that's before you.
So we cover the entire cost of it?
Yes.
So the only way that there's a waiver is for the
For the Saturday,
right.
the
Okay,
Saturday
I just want to
administration,
clarify that.
yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
you know, as we move forward and we make decisions based on title funds and those things, I think it's important, and
No, you're right. Some of my feedback was I moved too fast.
Yeah, no, it's here as our approval for the $77,000 to cover the costs of those in-school tests.
School
right,
test.
I understand that.
Yeah.
That's-
Any other questions? Okay, let's move on.
Thank you. That is our first item. Thank you, Ms. Dampierre. We appreciate it. Now we will move to Mr. Fagan. He will proceed through items B and C.
Thank you, Soup, through the chair. The first item before you is just some house cleaning and through the year-end cleanup and looking at all payables, receivables, and revenue. We found a couple of old invoices for Alan Norton Blue. He assisted the district through last year's 18-19 impasse and negotiations. And we found a couple of old invoices that had not been paid, and the total grows us slightly above the $50,000 limit that the superintendent has authority for. So the item before you today is simply to allow us to go ahead and fulfill these invoices and close out this account. Any questions?
I think we're good.
Next item is a review of the workers' compensation program for the district. Right there. PowerPoint's up. Okay, this will be funny, but good, but two sets of glasses, good deal. All right. First, I'd like to start off by saying the presentation before you is all good news.
Yay.
It's always a good
All
way to
good
start.
news. We just start
Like
off at the
that.
top. Okay, and that concludes the presentation. Thank you very much.
Let's stop while we're at.
Before we get into some of the details, I'm just going to give you two statistics. From 15-16 to 19-20, your total claims cost reduced 3.3 million or 92%. Total claims reduced from 117 to 88 or 25%. So you still got rid of your high dollars. For 18-19 to 19-20, so just a one-year comparison, you also reduced total claim costs by 78%. So overall, the cost of the entire program is going down. Now, this is just not by good luck. The reason that you're seeing these wonderful results is because of the lady behind me in blue. Her name is Mary D. McCarto. She started in February of 17. She is in quasi the risk manager for the department, and she oversees any and all worker compensation claims, works the claims, works with the attorneys, and does her very much best to minimize that exposure to us. So like I said, this is just not by luck. This is because of the very hard work that Mary D. has put in since her arrival. All right, if I can figure out how to work this. All right. Some of the items in the presentation, won't necessarily read every word, but basically we're going to look at a review from 15-16 to 19-20. We're going to look at the most recent years. We're going to look at the average claim rate and the average cost of the claim. Talk about some of the mod rate, which is the rate kind of like a credit score on how well you've been doing, and some cost controls, recommendations, and suggestions moving forward. Next chart, total claims. Kind of a busy chart, but this is the meat and the potatoes of the presentation. If you see on the far left, $3.6 million of total claims. Far right, $284,000 in claims. This is your 92% reduction. Had a little spike here and there, but you always will have claims. You will always have accidents. The main driving force in workers' comp is to get people to back to work as soon as possible. You can still continue to pay their medical bills, but you give them accommodations so they're working. Your biggest challenge or your biggest liability is when you have people sitting at home. Now I'm paying their medical bill, and I'm also paying for them to sit home. When Ms. Mary D. arrived, there were a few people that were at home that we had to investigate and find out where, why, and how come. Currently, right now, Mary D., we will have 2. You currently have 2 individuals who are, quote, unable to come to work because of medical conditions. Keep in mind, let's say you have an accident, you break your leg, you hurt your hip. You're going to be out of work for a few days, but the object is to get you taken care of medically, get you into rehab, and get you back to work as soon as possible. So you're always going to have some. The idea is to minimize it. Next one is lost time. This is the one that will eat you alive. As you see on the far left, $3.6 million paying people to stay home. Far right, $75,000. Still had, and also the number of claims, 22 people, far left, 2 people, far right. Huge increase, huge decrease, therefore a huge decrease in cost. Medical claims only. You're always going to have a fall and slip. Therefore, you're always going to have medical cost. Keep in mind when you're working with workers' comp, the 2 factors, medical and work. Medical, once you get through paying the bill, only 30% of that will hit you later for your increases in premiums and costs in the future. Because they say everybody gets hurt, you got to pay to fix the bill. If it fixes them, you're okay. But if you allow them to stay home and not report to work, that's where they come looking. Next chart. Average annual claims rate versus annual cost. In 2018-19, your average claim was $736. 19-20, it's $161. That's a 78% decrease. Number of claims, average claim rate, 6.6%, down to 5%. That's a 24% reduction. Next 2 charts you need to kind of take with a grain of salt. These are the locations where you've had claims. It doesn't mean that the site is unsafe. It doesn't mean that there are deficiencies at the sites. This is just the fact of the program. You will have people who will trip and fall and hurt themselves. You just never know where they're going to be. Whenever there is an accident, Mary D. and her team will go out to the site, investigate the site, see what was going on at the site. Was there something in a safety issue that caused the site? If it was, a work order is immediately put in to take care of it. If it was a wet floor, why was it wet? Why was there no signs? If there was a root sticking out of a sidewalk, maintenance will be called to take care of it. Sometimes it's just tripping and falling over your own feet. Next chart, this is 1920, same scenario. It's just 2 charts showing the number of schools, but again, some of the schools are consistent, some of them are not. But again, it's not an indication of any deficiencies at the schools. This is where we combine them all. So if you look at this chart, you might think Dodgertown is an unsafe site. It's not. It's just an indication of more claims than usual. Versus adult ed at the very top has very few claims.
I have a comment. Are we waiting till the end?
Please.
Okay, is that okay? May I? Okay, thank you. So we've talked a little bit about teacher dress code and footwear. And I'm just wondering, we have a student code of conduct. For teacher code of conduct or teacher dress code, There's been question before, and Mary D's smiling behind her. There's been a question before about the shoes that staff and teachers are allowed to wear on campus because that can contribute to additional claims.
Through the chair, the most direct answer I could probably provide, the more money we save here, the more money we could use to pay teachers. So there is an opportunity to look at what we're doing at a proactive measure. I think Mary D would probably wholeheartedly agree that we need to look at some of those things, preventative measures that we can take from all employees in order to save funds, to maximize and fund what is the core mission of this school district.
Next chart is the top 10 claims incurred since 1516 to 1920. So there's 10 claims here. All 8 of the 10 have already been settled and the cases are now closed. Mod rate, modification rate. Your mod rate is kind of like your credit score, but it goes in the opposite direction. The higher your mod rate, the more risky you are. So the mod rate is basically nothing more than a safety score. It's a safety incentive. The more safe you are, the lower your mod rate, the lower your cost. Last year, we paid $1.8 million in worker compensation premium insurance. For 2021, we also are approximately paying $1.8 million. So no significant increase. Our biggest increase will come next year. There's a delay between the time the claims are incurred and the claims are paid till you begin to see that benefit in a lower premium rate. No more different than a car insurance. You have to wait till the bad years fall off before they'll give you that break. It's also interesting, the longer an employee stays home, the less likely he'll come back to work. Historically, this is your mod rate since 2010. As you can see, it's kind of creeped up until going into 2021. You went from 1.75 to 1.46. That's a 16% decrease. We expect, based on our current trend, for that rate to continue to decrease. Next couple pages are just some incentives and some recommendations and some things that we're doing within the district. We're completing resurface testing for all playgrounds. Playgrounds are notorious for accidents. We want to make sure that there's as much cushion on those playground areas as possible to cushion any children who may fall. We also, on a regular basis, train all bus drivers and some food service individuals on CPR and first aid training. We'd like to expand that into the schools as well, and also into custodians and teachers based on recent claim activity. Uh-oh. Okay. Okay. Give me that for a minute.
Brian, you maybe making their lives more difficult over there.
Okay. Next chart. Loss observation controls. Remember when I said you don't look at the site, you look at the cause? Again, the comment regarding the shoes. The number one reason we have claims is tripping or falling on the same level. I like to say this, tripping and falling on your own feet. You're walking and you trip and fall, for whatever be the reason. Now, of course, if you hang around with me long enough and you hang around with me and Mary D, she'll get on to me sometimes because we were walking up the stairs the other day and I had my cell phone in my hand. She said, Ron, put down your cell phone. You're making the risk manager a little nervous. So I put down my cell phone. Loss control recommendations. We recently completed first aid and CPR training for bus drivers and bus assistants. We basically use relations to come in and train. We want to get to a program to where we can train a trainer, so we'll have some in-house people who can go around and not only train bus drivers and bus assistants, but anytime there's a change and a turnover, we can get them training as soon as possible, expand this into the custodian arena, and maybe also well as into the schools as well. It's also looking into potentially of occupational safety program and position, and also, well, that's wellness, that's separate term. Occupational safety program and safety specialist. This is someone who will go out, investigate where an accident occurred, but also take that information and go to other sites. Are there other potentials? Just because there's not been an accident doesn't mean there won't be. So if something happened at 3 sites, go visit the other sites and see if you see something similar. Again, part of the preventive measures. Another item also is you want to get in front of that claim as soon as possible. So this means you want to get that employee who has been hurt to you as soon as possible so you can get all the necessary paperwork, do the investigation, and also monitor that claims cost. So One potential option we have is to have everything going through Care Here office. There's a building next door to Care Here where if you are hurt, you go to that office, all your paperwork is handled there, and Care Here, we're currently looking to see if they can do that first preliminary review. That's just more on Care Here. And that's all I have. Any questions?
Yes.
Mrs. Justice.
Can we talk a little bit about another, this is not the first time that I've heard the suggestion made for offices near Care Here. Can we talk a little bit about the costs associated with that? Who would be staffing it?
Through the chair, yes, ma'am. Currently, the cost, I have to get, there was some cost to basically take the building and build it out. It is basically a shell. There would be minimum cost to basically put in some drop leads for computers and electrical. It has HVAC and it has plumbing. My guess, if I remember correctly, was about $20,000 to modify that, and that was currently in the budget.
And who would be staffing that office?
Basically, that would be the risk management department.
Mrs. Rosario?
Yes, Mr. Fagan, can you clarify what you said about one option being employees can take care of what is needed through Care Here or file their paperwork? Could you repeat that, please?
Yes, ma'am, through the chair. If an employee is injured and wants to file a workers' comp claim, the idea would be for them to go to an office next to the Care Here office and process and present their paperwork there for collection of all information regarding the claim, versus them going back to the school and then going somewhere else first.
Okay, so that would just be for processing the paperwork, not for having a doctor checkup or anything like that, right?
That is correct, but we would also want probably the Care Here office to do that first initial review. They have to go somewhere, and we like to stay in front of that claim as to where they go.
So what if would this matter if an employee does not receive Care Here services?
No, ma'am. To the chair, no, ma'am. If they go to a
Okay.
primary somewhere else, that wouldn't have any interference with this.
But for example, someone who doesn't receive any of our benefits, an employee, they have benefits from someplace else, they've opted out of all of our benefits, but they get hurt on the job, they would need to complete their paperwork, have it processed in that office next to Care Here, but from that point forward, they would seek their own personal medical physicians or anything like that. Is that correct?
Through the chair, yes and no. If they're not part of our plan, they still have to go to an approved workers' compensation provider. They can't simply go anywhere for services.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. You actually answered, every time I had a question, your next sentence was answering my question. So what I'm left with is props to Mary D. Thank you, because a lot of my questions were around why is it going down so much and what have we instituted, both in how we deal with the claims and around the safety issues around schools. And every time I thought of it, you answered it and turned to Mary D. So I actually want to acknowledge how much you brought to this district. Because I could be wrong, but I don't think there was a you before you. We didn't have that position.
Correct. The position was vacant for a number of years.
Right. So now that we have it, what I'm really delighted to see and to acknowledge here is the difference it makes. What a difference it makes to have someone in charge of risk management from inside the district, and that the difference is clearly quantifiable. So thank you for that. And a big public acknowledgement for the work you do, the savings to the district, which, as Dr. Moore said, we can now put into things like teachers and classrooms and students and other areas. So thank you. Mrs. Justice.
Yeah, just a question to follow up. And we meet in executive session to discuss different types of litigation, and we can't discuss those things. But there were some questions the last time that we met regarding SCRIMP and the way that it is put together, the people that go to SCRIMP and the review process for claims. It wasn't an appropriate question to ask at the time, but it's an appropriate question for now. So I would just like some information about Scrimp, who attends from our district, who the other people are that attend at the district, and what the process is for coming to an understanding of what an appropriate amount approval process for the claim that they work with the lawyer for. So in a case, in some of these cases where we've settled.
Specific to litigation, we have annual claims reviews, and then we have like a smaller claim review every 6 months, where every single claim that we have, whether it's workers' comp or any type of casualty property claim, is reviewed, and it keeps us all on the same page. Oftentimes, we bring the harder cases before Scrimp, even prior to that, and take advantage of each other's experiences and knowledge, and say, this is what we have, what have you done that worked, what didn't work, you know, those types of things. It's one of the advantages of being in a consortium is that you have all of that knowledge, you know, available to you. Once we get to the litigation point, it's similar in that as soon as the attorney is assigned to the file, then we start gathering all the documents that are necessary for him to do his review, or her to do her review, and then start working it, you know, through there. Some things we can contain and some things we can't.
Sure. And the question really surrounds, you know, as a school board, there are proposed settlements that are brought before us, and they have been approved by Scrimp before they're brought to the school board. And so just wanted some clarification about just the process of what Scrimp's role is in determining what a fair settlement is.
The process is very similar to what y'all experience, that I understand y'all experience in closed session, and that is that the attorney makes a recommendation, provides all the background information, develops the strategies, what works, what doesn't work, what our risks are, what our exposures are. Often during that discussion at Scrimp is where we take advantage, you know, as well of others' expertise, and they'll say, hey, did you try this? Did you try that? You know, we'll speak to that. And, you know,
So I guess the question is, when Scrimp approves the settlement, is that something that should be taken into there should be a lot of confidence in that approval process from
oh,
Scrimp?
yes,
I mean,
ma'am, you've got all of those school districts.
that pay into the consortium?
Yes,
Okay, so
correct.
I just wanted to have some clarity about that.
Yes, so the consortium, you know, is cost containment. And everybody really has a slice of that pie. Using our school district as the example, you know, they were very, you know, adamant about making the recommendation to the board at the time for this position for that reason, because those costs affect everyone. These numbers are nice, but when we come together as a consortium, they look even better,
Right.
because what we do influences them and vice versa. And likewise, that's how we learn from each other as well, you know, sometimes the good, the bad, and sometimes the ugly.
Well, I'm sure they appreciate your input on that board, and I
Again.
certainly appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's a team effort. I can't do it by myself.
That's all my questions.
Thank you.
I think that's it for questions.
All right, thank you. And I
Next
do
item.
want to just one last time acknowledge the efforts of Mary D. I think that PowerPoint is a outstanding portfolio of her work and the impact. Being the risk manager, the risk manager in the district is not an easy job because you're basically telling people no all the time, as Mr. Bass smiles and shakes his head. But it is, in some ways, it is a lonely job, but we are so thankful that we have her, as evidenced by this presentation. So thank you, Mary D., to you and your team. Absolutely. And then the last item on the agenda is a item that has appeared before. This is the opportunity to provide any feedback that you would like as it relates to the annual feedback process that we proffered a few workshops ago as it relates to my performance over the course of the first 6 months on the job. As you know, not a formal evaluation because of the time in which I started. But what we agreed upon was the proffered evaluation system, very similar to what was used in years past, with a slight addition offered by Ms. Rosario, which was made and then emailed to each of you. I've had the opportunity to meet with each of you individually, receive feedback through conversation and dialogue. My recommendation would be afford each of you the opportunity to provide any feedback that you have here within this forum, and then submit the documentation, which is the joint signature card or sheet on or before 9/8, which would be the second 2 weeks from today. So that, Madam Chair, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. So just to clarify, what I hear you saying is we have the document, we've reviewed it, we've had individual meetings with you. This is an opportunity for us to publicly discuss anything that we might about that evaluation process, and then we will give you the documentation of that by our next board meeting on 9/8.
Through the chair, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any of my fellow board members have comments?
I'm not exactly sure what Dr. Moore is looking for. Are we discussing the process of the evaluation, how the evaluation is conducted, or the actual evaluation itself of your performance?
Okay. Through the chair, it is feedback, not necessarily an evaluation, in replace of an evaluation that was, my first evaluation as a result of my contract is at the end of next year. I wanted to model the opportunity to have feedback, as was the discussion at the board meeting, so I've had opportunities to have that feedback aligned to the previous evaluation system. I now have a board-approved evaluation going into 2021 with the annual targets that have been clearly defined, aligned to our strategic plan. Getting ready in about 6 weeks to bring my first update to the board as it relates to that one. So this is just the opportunity. Really, it could be no conversations. It could be, this is your progress. This is just a opportunity in the sunshine to provide any public feedback you may have. And then on or before 9/8, if you haven't already done so, submit that evaluation sheet, which you've referenced in the before, very similar to the one you've done.
I have a follow-up comment then, Matt. Thank you. Dr. Moore, I have been working on your evaluation, but just publicly, I'd like to state that in my experience, sometimes statute or mandates from the state are seen as limitations as to what a school district can do. And I have been continually impressed by the fact that you do not see them as limitations, you see it as a starting point. And they don't limit us from what they're doing. It create a structure and a foundation, and we build upon that to be Best Buy Kids. So just want to state that publicly. Thank you for that. I see that you as a role model and your staff are exemplifying that across the district. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mrs. Rosario, any comments? Okay. I will just, I have a whole set of
Sorry,
written comments.
may I?
Sure, go ahead.
You got to give me an extra second to get to that mic, that's all.
Sorry, I didn't see a
don't have-
comment
I don't
here,
have
so.
any-
She's shaking her head.
Sorry?
She was shaking her head.
No. Yeah, no, we thought you were shaking your head no, and I didn't see a comment on Teams, so hence I went on, but go ahead.
It's okay, it's okay. No, I don't have any questions or comments. Dr. Moore and I talked about this, and I'm in agreement with the suggestion. So I look forward to all of us coming together at some point at the tail end of it. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to say a couple of things without going through, because I've written it up and I've thought about it, but we'll do more in the next couple of weeks. What I want to acknowledge here is not only the unprecedented circumstances in which you found yourself, which is trying for an experienced superintendent, let alone a new superintendent. And what I most appreciate is not only how you've risen to the occasion, but you have done so in a way taking into consideration not just your own opinion about what we should do, but you have done more Facebook Lives and surveys and focus groups and all of those things. And what I have seen you do is actually, when you have made a decision that is not consistent with what some element of our community wants, if it's parents or it's teachers or it's others, you've actually walked it back. And to me, that's a sign of leadership. A sign of management is you do what I say, how I want it done. A sign of leadership is having the fortitude and the strength to listen to others' comments and walk it back when you have to. So not only have you done that, but in the time that you've been here, we have a new strategic plan. We have a new school allocation model. We have new policies and procedures in human resources. We have new communication systems. We have new teaching models. I could go on and on. There's a lot. You've shifted policy and procedure, you've shifted communication, you've shifted our website, all in efforts of enhancing transparency. Our finance department, through you, but really also with Mr. Fagan has transformed in the last year. So while I know that we will do this in a more formalized way, I want to publicly acknowledge how much you've done in the amount of time you've been here, in which students have been in school now 46 days. I used to say 44 days, it's now
Exactly,
46 days.
exactly.
Which for the 8 months or whatever it is you've been a superintendent
Crazy.
is unusual at best.
Absolutely.
So thank you for your service to that. Thank you for what you've done. Thank you for rising to the occasion. And while this is an informal process, and the reviews that we do as board members will be available once they're completed and signed, I just want to mention some of that publicly, because the amount of work you've done in the last 8 or 9 months, not years, it feels like years, has been pretty exceptional. And I can tell even in my saying this how uncomfortable it's making you to be looking directly across at you saying this.
Be done.
But I am a big fan of acknowledgement where it's due. And while I will actually, there are things we've talked about that I look forward to improving as we move forward. I am confident that we will only get better and better by kids. So thank you.
Thank you, thank you. And Madam Chair, that concludes our presentations for today. We intentionally had a light agenda, knowing that it was the second day of school, which affords my team the opportunity to go and view some dismissals.
Yeah, I do have.
Dr. Moore,
Oh,
Dr. Moore.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
Okay, we're not done. Mrs. Justice and then Mrs. Rosario.
I just wanted to bring to light, it's my understanding that some board members had a conversation regarding attendance at school board meetings versus virtual attendance. We are requiring our teachers to come to school. We are requiring our teachers to come to school. So I do hope in the future that board members begin to attend meetings in person. The county commission does it, the city of Vero Beach does it, and I think it would be, I think it's in the best interest of our students and families to, for them to be represented. The engagement level is different when you are here in person than it is when you are accessing the meeting via Teams.
Mrs. Rosario?
I wanted to just let you all know that as I'm still on vacation in Pennsylvania, I will not be on this evening for the board meeting. I just wanted to let you all know that. I also wanted to let you know that when I come back, we're still in the quarantine, that after you travel, you're supposed to be 2 weeks in quarantine. So that's where I will be, and then after that, I intend to come back. So that was what I was planning to say before Mrs. Justice.
Thank you. And I think it's adjourned at 2:01. Excellent.